people think of technologies as one thing where they're like, as if like technology is food, for example. And they're like, oh, screen time is bad. It's like saying food is bad.
Bonjour, welcome to Wide Walls, a podcast where inspiring educators, researchers, designers, and innovators share their personal journey and their vision for creating better learning experiences for children. My name is Mathieu Penaud. I am a product manager and learning experience designer, and I am passionate about the role of design and technology in education and learning, and the humans behind it. If you find this episode insightful, share it with your friends and colleagues and give us some stars on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you very much for your support and for being part of the conversation. And now, let's welcome our guest. Today, I am thrilled to introduce our guest, Ingvi Ómarsson. Ingvi serves as a senior advisor for the Ministry of Education in Iceland, where he leads the implementation of large-scale educational policies. Prior to this role, he spent 7 years as the Chief Innovation Officer of the Skagafjörður School District, leading innovation and transformation by organizing and facilitating workshops focused on technology and innovation for educators and school leaders. Ingvi and I met at the Stanford School of Education, where we were both pursuing our Master in Learning, Design, and Technology. And one thing that immediately struck me about Ingvi was his natural inclination for bringing people together and encouraging the exchange of knowledge. A great example is the UTIS conference, an event he initiated in 2015 for Icelandic educators, which he continues to run today and stands as the largest educational conference in Iceland. But Ingvi's talents don't stop there. He's not only a remarkable innovator, public speaker, and designer. He is first and foremost a gifted educator. Among other achievements, Ingvi received the 2020 Icelandic Educational Award, was designated Icelandic Teacher of the Year in 2018, and was featured on the 100 Influential Educators. So today, I am thrilled to chat with Ingvi about the features and evolution of Iceland's educational system, as well as the role of technology in public schools. Ingvi, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Iceland, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for a great introduction too. That was really good. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's all the things that you did.
Yeah, well.
Did I pronounce well UTIS and Skagafjörður?
It was really good. Yeah, UTIS and then Skagafjörður. Skagafjörður is the fjord that I live in, and I'm from. And so I worked for the school district in Skagafjörður, and then UTIS stands for, it really means technology in schools. That's what it initially started as. So that's what UTIS is.
Awesome.
Stands for in Icelandic.
Thank you. Yeah. And when I mention all the things that you did, how do you feel when you reflect on this journey from where you started to where you are now?
It's been fun. I feel like every year has brought a new challenge. It's been fun chapters in this book of life so far. A lot of interesting chapters, and certainly I think the most memorable one definitely is my time as a classroom teacher. I think that's the part that I always want to go back to, and that I felt most, I think, in some ways engaged and most, just in my work. It's the period of time that taught me the most, and I think I grew the most during that time when I was teaching first, second, and third grade in Iceland. So early elementary.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm curious, you mentioned that time as a teacher, and you say that it was kind of transformative for you. Like, what are some of the things that you learned during that time?
I think some of the things that I learned, it was, first of all, like when I went to study to become a teacher, that wasn't what I planned to do. My first thing was I wanted to be a designer or interior designer or design furniture. That was like kind of what I wanted to do, and still am fascinated by that though. I was just visiting a school in Denmark 2 days ago, and we visited a couple of schools there. Like what I was drawn towards was a lot of it was the design of the classroom and the space and the furniture and how we use that and what that kind of how space can influence a lot of the things that we are able to do, and how often schools and classrooms kind of limit what we see as possible or how we view a class going. So I think a lot of that was you're doing constant as an educator. That's what I loved about the job is like how, especially in Iceland, like how much autonomy you have as an educator. Like we have that here in Iceland. You kind of decide a lot of the things that you like. You can create your own classes and kind of have a lot of autonomy of how they look, which I think can be really good, but it's also a lot of work. So it taught me a lot of things about just trial and error, and looking at things and just being like, everything I do is just work in progress. Like nothing's ready, nothing's finished, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't publish it. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. You know, you just try your best, do what you can, and then, publish. And that has been true to whether that is me starting a blog or a podcast like you have. And at the time when I did that, yeah. So like, just like, okay, I just want to do this. And I think that's a great mindset. It's a great mindset to think just like, it's better to try 20 things and fail at 19 of them and like one is successful than to like think for a year about the one thing that you're maybe going to try, but you're not going to do it until it's perfect and you end up not doing it at all, so
Yeah, and when you're a teacher, like you have anyway, you have the kids in front of you every day.
Yeah,
you do need to deliver a lesson.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you don't have a choice.
It was great. I mean, I really loved it.
Thank you for sharing all that. Definitely a lot of topics that I want to come back to, but I'd like to rewind a little bit before getting there and kind of learn a little more about you and your childhood and how you grew up. How would you describe it?
My childhood was, I would say, really good. I was really lucky. My parents are still together to this day. Not that you could be lucky and if they're not together, but my parents are like really loving parents, really supportive. Still, both have worked as educators in the past. And my dad was a gym teacher for a period of time, and then kind of a interior designer at IKEA, and then he did a few other things, and then he's working on a lot of projects now. And my mom was a music teacher for a little bit, and then she was a social worker, and then they started a restaurant here in town, and then she became a TV and media presenter, so like a lot on TV. So they're very creative and supportive. And we grew up in a small town here in the north of Iceland called Söderkrókur, which is probably, like one of the safest places to grow up, in the world. My parents kind of like instilled a lot of the things that just like how important the community is, and that question of like, what can you do for the community? What can you do for other people? And so that was here. And so I ended up teaching at the same school that I went to myself, and which informed a lot of my thinking about like, actually the school hasn't changed as much as the world outside of it, because I was teaching in the same classroom as I was a student myself. So I was like, all right, these students are going into a whole different world where they're going to get, information differently. They're going to share things differently. They're going to be able to create things that, when I was a student, we couldn't even think of.
Thank you. And yeah, I can see how your parents were like inspirations to you. Like I could see like those keywords, interior designer, like educators, like
Yeah,
all those
yeah,
things
yeah.
that you ended up
Yeah,
entrepreneurs too, like starting in their own restaurants. Like I can see how that
yeah,
trickled down to who you
yeah.
are.
So, and I still am very close. They live in town here. So when I'm in Iceland, when I'm in here, then I'm going actually to dinner there in an hour or so.
Wonderful.
So, we try to stay close.
And was there a particular teacher who made like a lasting impact on you that maybe influenced, your journey?
Um, I remember my first and second and third grade teacher. My early elementary school teacher really was just a wonderful person, and I that's all I remember from that period. I don't like some people, you've heard like you don't remember what people say, you kind of more remember how they made you feel. And like I remember she just had an amazing presence and you could just feel that she cared about you. I always think of her when I'm writing about what kind of a teacher I want to be. Uh, and then there were other teachers that I had that I later worked with at the school here that I liked, and it was the teachers that genuinely just cared and were just human.
Mm.
And then there was an acting teacher at the university too that I still would chat with today and message and wish happy birthday, and so she was really cool too, because a lot of teaching is just acting. A lot of life is just who like kind of mirroring people's energy, and just that's kind of like it's not that you're fake in any way. Like it's not about being fake, but really like reading the situations of what do people need right now and how can I kind of adjust my expectation and my presence to kind of fit that. So I think it was kind of cool to learn how to play roles and kind of, because you need that too with students. You need that in schools. You need to kind of know that. So I think those teachers kind of, yeah, the ones that stood out to me for sure.
Very interesting. I know it's an array of elementary school very early on,
Yeah,
college professors
yeah,
and different subjects
yeah.
and different areas that kind of come together. It's very interesting. And was there a pivotal moment when you decided to become an educator, something that made you click, or was it more going with the flow?
Uh, so I went to study to become a teacher because I didn't get into the design school that I wanted to.
Mm.
So and just basically I didn't have a portfolio. I didn't know that you needed a portfolio. I'm just from a small town. Had no clue that when I was applying to this school that I would need a portfolio of like my work. I just thought, I just thought like, I didn't think lawyers or kids who wanted to study law school had to have defended anyone in court or shown like, I was like, I would like to go here. I can show you what I'm interested in and what I'd like to do. I've done some stuff, but I hadn't done the preparation also that I think other students, like in Reykjavik, there's an art school, like an art prep school for the design school. Somebody said to me, "Oh, just go to the University of Education, like University of Iceland, in the education department, and study to become a teacher because you can do anything with that degree. You can do your master's in anything else, and it's just a great basic degree that you can get, and it'll also get you a job if you want." So I started it, and then I was like, this is actually fun. I'm actually liking this more and more. This is actually a cool one. So it just became, I was like, all right, I can do this. And then I remember I was like, first class, I was like top of the class or something. I was like, whoa, I'm actually pretty good at this. This is fun. I like this. This is useful and it's fun. So it just became like just a passion. And I really dove into school at that time. And I could pair it with so many of the things that I was interested in. It was that like try things, work with people, designing lesson plans, designing like things that students were doing. also the autonomy of saying, all right, let's now build a new playground or a new school playground. Like, what should that look like? What do we want? Kind of doing the design thinking with 6-year-olds, and kind of all of those things I could do. And I was like, this is so creative. This is so fun. And yeah, so I just loved it. And it's really what I think want to do in some ways, is just, do that again and teacher that, because that was really the time. Yeah. I really enjoyed.
I love it.
So yeah.
And actually, I'm curious because I know a lot of teachers who want their job to be creative and fun, but there's often like so many constraints that the creativity and the fun parts are not necessarily like what comes first, I think, when I describe what they're doing. And I'm wondering if that's something that's more because of how you were approaching the role of teacher, or what you were doing, or is it because the educational system in Iceland is made in a way that you have maybe more autonomy to do your own things and more flexibility to bring in your own personality and stuff you want to do with the kids?
I love that question. I think that's really a good observation, because I think it's easy to say it's both, in some way, but I do think it's mostly the second part, which is the system is just, we're a small country. There's a lot of trust in teachers. But being the small country also means we don't have a lot of resources. Like I can't go and teach 7th grade math, and there's no curriculum that's going to say class 1, week 1, teach this. This is what they're supposed to be done. If they haven't finished this by the end of 40 minutes or 80 minutes, this is the homework. For next class, second class of the first week, do this thing. Like, there's nothing like that. There's math book, and then you just go through that, but you kind of have to build a lot of your own stuff. And so there's a lot of collaboration between teachers in Iceland. They have to share a lot of what they do. There's trust in their work, and there's a lot of prep time compared to other countries. Like, you get 20 minutes of prep time for every 40 minutes you teach, and that's outside of lunch and breaks. So, I would teach until like 12, I think 12:40 or so. From like 8:10 to 12:40 would teach, and then I would go to lunch with the students, and they were out. And I was like, from 10 past 1 to 4, I would just have time to prep for the next day. And there wasn't a lot of like data you had to input, or tests weren't getting in the way. So we had a lot of freedom and autonomy, which is a great thing that we should really be proud of and really keep to hold onto, because it's so valuable, and it's so easy to lose in the pressures of the race to nowhere, that we're just like competing, having students compete on these tests that don't really measure what they know or who they are or what they can do. And it's just taking time from real learning and real teaching. And so that's I think a lot of it, the second, you can't really do the first part that you said, which is like creative with your classes, if you don't have the second part, which was the system. The system is really important. And and I don't think sometimes teachers in Iceland value it enough. They've seen the free, I don't think they are aware of the freedom and the autonomy and the possibilities that they have sometimes. Like, I don't think they appreciate it enough sometimes, because you can see it in a lot of other countries how tight it is. But of course, the first part too, like being creative and wanting to try new things, that's just what it's, in my mind, it's just natural. It's just what I like to do, and have fun with that. And so, I think you can't have one without the other, really, but certainly the system helps. Like
Yeah.
it would almost be impossible without it.
Yeah, it does sounds like a luxury to have that time built in to prep. Like I can think like my
Mm-hmm.
parents were both teachers in primary school,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like at school from
Yeah.
8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Sometimes 6 if they were doing like after school for the kids' homework. Like there was no
Yeah.
time to like when you prepare when you're at home late or during the weekend,
Yeah.
like, and you're not in a good mindset because it's
No.
after hours. So yeah, I love that this is built
But I
in.
do admit I worked way too much when I was teaching. I was working until 11 or midnight sometimes. I remember that past midnight. I was the only person in the school. I was just like, I remember so many late nights. And it wasn't because I was grading anything. It was just like, how do I make this perfect? How do I make tomorrow the best day, best school day these kids have ever been to? Like, how do we make that happen? What can we do? And I never felt like I had done enough or the day was long enough for that. And I mean, there was always room to try something and do something better. And because it was always felt like a deadline, like today, we always felt like, oh, tomorrow is the day, like it's gotta be ready. We're doing this for tomorrow. Like we gotta make that the best day. And then next day, something came up or we were doing something different. And I was always like, all right, tomorrow is going to be, and you felt like you were kind of like cheating if you went home because I would be so mad at myself if I wasn't ready, I wasn't prepped, I wasn't ready to have it be a great school day. If it was my fault that they didn't have a good school day, it was a bad lesson, or it was, and I felt like I should have done better. So it was hard, but that was just like me, and also learning. I was the only teacher in that classroom, so I needed someone who was more experienced than me to guide me. It was really isolated. It was really lonely to be a teacher, and and that really has changed since we went into the team teaching model at the schools. Two or more teachers together, and it really helps younger teachers to kind of develop and see what does good teaching look like, and kind of mirror yourself in another person, whether that's a seasoned educator or just like someone who's starting out like you. Like that has really, I wish that was there when I started.
And is that team teaching something that's generalized to the country, or it's kind of school by school you decide you want to do it?
It's school by school, but it's getting really big. Like I would say if you visit Iceland and see the Icelandic school system, or if I was to recommend, here are 5 schools you should visit, or even 10 schools or 20 schools, it would all be team teaching schools. It would all be schools that are doing that because they're really sharing what they're doing. They're really, it's just a different, mindset. And yeah, so it's not something that's mandated by the government, but it certainly is something that is a big, big thing happening all over Iceland in the past maybe 7 years or so. Really has really been a transformational thing for us, I would say.
It's very interesting because when I think about it, again, I like to think about France because I'm kind of also looking a lot at the educational system there. But in the US, I think it would be the same. It would be literally impossible to do that in France for like 2 reasons. One is that there's not enough budget and to like get multiple teachers in front of the kids, and the classes are already like overcrowded. And the second thing is that there would not be enough teachers to apply to find for the school.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how you deal with this.
Well, so it's not. So you would have bigger class sizes we have maybe 2 teachers for about, I think in our school that are like 27 to about 45 students, based on like, depends on how big the grade is. So you can have 3 teachers if you go over 40, 45, but no class at least for our school is bigger than 50. I think that's the biggest class. But what we did was we broke down the walls between 2 classrooms. So what was all over the school, everywhere there were 2 classrooms, or like 6 in a row, and that became 3 classrooms, and we put a door between, like a sliding door or like a big door between the two. But we didn't put in the door until the first year, until New Year's. So the first 4 or 5 months, you had to adapt, you had to teach as being one class. And then once the doors came, then you were so used to it and you were already a team and you were already one class that you didn't really use them unless you needed them. Because what would have happened is if we would have broken down the wall and put in a door instead and then say, all right, you're teaching together, people would just kept it closed and then complained that it was so loud that you could hear the other classroom through this door and they wanted the wall back. You know, that's so it's not, you don't need more teachers, maybe a little bit, but not really. And you need less, especially if you have like 3 teachers in a class of like 45. If somebody's sick, the 2 teachers just take care of it, you know. So there's more continuation of the students' studies. They also have more choice of what teacher fits them right now and who can help them. So I think that's really cool too. And if something comes up and a teacher needs to deal with something, there is another adult in the classroom and the class just keeps going. So there's so many cool things and benefits that we've seen there, which has been, I mean, I would, and I'm a big, ed tech proponent in school, but I would take out all of our technology before I would take out team teaching for us. Like it was either one, then I would keep team teaching, because that's really where the dialogue happens, where the transformation for teachers and like their growth as educators is really happening. And so I think that's the thing.
That's a very interesting model indeed. I would love to also talk about one of the things that you tried and did not fail, which is the UTIS conference, which is a huge success.
Yeah.
I'd love to learn more about how it started, what was your motivation, and also what the conference looks like now.
So before I started at the ministry and kind of like at the early time, so when I was a teacher, it started back then, the conference, and it wasn't supposed to be a conference. That's an accident. That's just an experiment that, we tried something and it stuck. But it started when I was a teacher myself, because like I said, I was very isolated in my classroom. I was just, after, like, where was I going to go? Everyone was gone at 4:00 and I didn't know who to talk to about any of the things. And I was like, I think, and I was running the first iPad 1-to-1 class. Like all of my students had iPads in 2nd grade, like back in 2011, something like, so we were doing a lot of cool, innovative things, but nobody else in the school was doing any of like the iPad things or some of the things that were like, we visited the senior center in town every week. I took students there and we played cards, we read to the seniors, and just like we're learning, empathy and just dialogue, and they would talk to them and, knit, or, they were like, we implemented a lot of theater and dance and music and creativity, and we were doing a lot of things. But I was like, I can't do this alone for so long. Like I need someone. So I started blogging, started my own blog that nobody read, which was fine because it wasn't for other people, it was for me. It was for me to kind of like write about what I was thinking. And that was great. And then I started reaching out, buying a lot of books and reaching out to authors that had great ideas. And then Twitter came along and I started the Icelandic Educational Twitter chat, which was every other Sunday. So then I would just have a topic, let's say, whatever it was, outdoor education, let's say that was a topic that we had. What can we do? And like we had 5 questions every other Sunday at 11. And sometimes 2 people would show up and sometimes 100 people would show up. It was different. And we kind of built a group of educators who were interested in talking about new things, new ways. It could be, how to use technology in education. What are can be testing. It can be whatever we wanted. So we kind of built a lot of connections through that. And then one day somebody, I don't even remember who, said, we're always meeting online. We should meet in person. And I just thought, yeah, sure. I think that sounds great. If anybody wants to come up north to my little town here, let's meet up and hang out for a Friday. You can visit my school and then we'll have lunch and then we'll do an ed camp together and you'll stay at the hotel here and we'll do a little, workshops on the Saturday. And then I think it was 59 people that signed up and just drove up north on that Friday a few weeks later. And we were like, this was awesome. And I saw that there were a lot of other crazy educators all around that needed a community. And they were just like, all right, we got to do this again. And I was like, sure, let's, same time next year, let's do that. So we did it again. I brought a couple of educators I knew from the US, had them speak. We did workshops and I'm in a small town. There's not a lot of hotels here. So we didn't have a lot of space for people. So we had 80 people in 2016. I was able to make space for 100 people in 2017, but we had a waiting list of about 200 people.
Wow.
So, because these teachers told their best teachers, and it was always kind of a secret. It was always like, all right, there's this conference in Iceland, in Söderkrókur. It's called UTIS. I want you to apply. I'm going to apply and let's try to go together. But don't tell anyone else because there are only 100 spaces. So we had so many people wanting to come in because it was good content. I think it's well produced. I really like the design part of it and kind of like gathering people. And so I think about that like constantly. I think there's not a day that goes by that I don't write an idea about what to do in terms of the conference this year. Like, what can we do differently? If they see something like, oh, that's cool, let's try that. Like a podcast, for example. For this year's conference, I'm going to do a little bit of a podcast series where I'm going to call up some of the participants and ask them what they're up to. And then I'm just going to share that with 100 attendees that are coming this year. So, and then this just grew and people, 2018 we had 120. Again, this is due to hotels, but it's also due to, we wanted small. We wanted to be the best educators in Iceland. I don't want 10 of them to be from the same school. I want them to be all over the country. I want also the one teacher that's in, the small town up in the West Fjords or the East or that are isolated. I want them to have a community because that's what I was looking for. So kind of trying to have about 2 from each school that applies, have them be a pair, but don't have them be together the entire time because they'll have time on the way there and on the way back to talk and then the whole school year. So just kind of, build that. And that's just kind of how it grew. And the participants know that it's UTIS is about, you're not an observer, you're a participant. Like it's not something you go to, it's something you're a part of. And that's kind of a big thing. You present there, you talk about what you're doing, you're sharing what you're doing. So because I'm in New York for a lot of the time, I'm actually bringing 100 Icelandic educators to New York in November.
Wow.
We're going to visit schools and be together and just go to dinner. And there's tacos and tequila, open bar on one of the nights. There's happy hour every night. It's going to be an amazing trip. So 100 lucky educators are going to go to New York in November. Because I thought, why not? Let's try that. Let's try something new. Maybe it fails. Maybe it's going to be awful, or maybe it's going to be great. It's worth a shot. It's worth a try. Always stretching things and trying new things. So it's been So and that's as you said in the intro, that project won the Icelandic Educational Awards. I won the Icelandic Educational Awards in 2020 for the conference, or just like the community, because that's really what it is. It's the community. It's the people that show up.
Yeah.
There's no point. So the amazing educators we have.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Such a great story. I love it. Yeah. The story and just like achievements. Yeah. And I love how it started at the beginning, but because it served like a certain purpose and because it was helpful to them, that there was that word of mouth, right? That really brought more and more educators.
Yeah.
Because there was a need for that.
Mm-hmm. And I studied entrepreneurship and innovation, and like I remember we were in one of the advertisement classes, like how to get ideas to spread. And word of mouth is just, if you get one person to something and you create an amazing experience for them, they'll tell so many people, and they'll be able to tell your story way better than you. Like me going around and saying, "Oh, can you come to this thing?" Like they're like, "Who are you? And why should I do that instead of all the other things?" Like I get emails about a conference, every month or every week or whatever. But if it's someone that you trust and know that's from your school, and they're like, "This is something we need to do," and like give people more than what they expect. Like if you do more, and that's, they don't expect this, and then you can do something fun with the food, and you can do something fun with, just like do something that they don't expect, do it better than they think it's going to be, try something new, and like really create that. And that's, I think that's like the key to it, is just like, because people can feel, and you know how it is, like you walk into an event or a place or a classroom or a class, and you can just, if the teacher has really thought about this and really prepared it, like you can just feel perfection. Like you don't know what it is always. Like you can just say like, there's something about it, and you're like, I don't know. You go away and you're like, I don't know what it was, but it was something. And you can just like, you just know that it's there. And the little details matter so much, in my opinion. Like the color scheme of the thing, the making a name tag where your name is actually the main thing. How many name tags do you see at a conference where the name is actually one of the smallest things on the thing? It's like a conference logo, somebody's, whatever, where they're from or whatever. And their name is like their entire name. And I have a long name. So people are like, don't even see that. And you're like, why do I have a name tag here? Is that for security to know that I'm actually supposed to be in this conference? Or is it for people to know who I am and what my name is? Because names are important to people. And, it's just like little things like that. It's like, and you think about how people are going to sit, like just an example from the conference. Like when people walked in, and we had a standing like hors d'oeuvres and like snacks and drinks when people came in, but we also had a seat for 120 people. So we had seats on one side of the hall, and then we had standing like high tables on the other side. And when people walked in, they got champagne, they got drink, they got whatever they wanted. They were doing stuff, and there was a photo booth and stuff. But they also had, there was one table filled with everyone's name tags. There was like a placement for where they were going to sit. And so what you did was you grabbed your name tag, and then you just found a seat and you placed it on the seat that you wanted to be in. And then you went back to standing and chatting with people. Okay. If we wouldn't have done that, what would have happened is people would have gotten nervous about, oh, I'm going to lose my seat. I'm not going to be able to sit with this person. So they go directly to the seats where everybody sits down, and they sit with the people they know. And they just sit down. And then they sit there and they're holding their place until the dinner starts. And then they maybe put their bags there and they put their coats to kind of claim a seat. And I understand it. But we said there are no coats allowed. There are no bags allowed. They're not there because you're supposed to be able to move between tables, and just put your name tag wherever you're going to sit. And then you can easily move that. It's easier to, oh, I'm going to sit with, oh, I met someone there. Oh, and I can grab my name tag and move it to another place. But then people really like, first of all, I could see as soon as everybody picked up their name tag, I saw their name because I stood by there and I saw their name and I greeted them with their name. And that was important to people. They got that. And also every single name tag had a different color. If you were vegetarian, there was a yellow line on top. If you were vegan, there was a green line on top. If you were pescatarian, there was a blue line on top. Like if it didn't matter, it was a black line on top. So when the waiters came in, they knew where everybody, they handed out plates that fit everybody in the room. And they didn't have to ask, are you a vegetarian? Are you vegan? Are you this? They were just like, they saw the name tag and they put it there. They just knew it. And so things go smoothly. Like these are just little things. And then you have a big name tag on you too, to tell people what your name is. Then we have rules, the Pac-Man rule, where you always need to stand. And we introduce it. We'd say, whenever you're standing in a group of, 3 or more people, always leave space for one person, like a Pac-Man, leave open space so somebody can walk into that and they're welcome into your group, even though they don't know you. And then when they fill that space, you make the bit circle a little bit bigger and leave space for somebody to join. And like things like this, like matter a lot. And it's, this is like such a passion of mine to like kind of design experiences for people about like, how do you feel welcome? What is the point of what we're doing? And what's the point of gathering that we're doing? How do we make everyone like, and it's about being thoughtful. It's just, so I think people can feel this. I think people, when they come in, they like feel that things have been thought through, and like we're trying something, and just, we're open and honest about like, we want to enforce the Pac-Man rule. And people don't want that. We're enforcing you. Everybody now get up and switch seats. Sit with someone you don't know. And people are like, that's hard. We don't want to do that. But we're really trying to help their future selves and saying, when you leave this conference, you are going to know 10 times more people than you knew before. That's the goal of the conference. I want you to know a lot of people, and we need to enforce that. I need to be a very harsh host and just say, nope, we're doing this. I know you don't like it now, but you'll thank me later. And it's a cool, I think it's about design. And you know this too. Like you're like, how do we do this? How do we design? That's how we're designers. And like, how do we design experiences? How do we design, experiences for people where they want to come back and they don't really know why necessarily. Like this was different. This is something new, and that's a lot of work.
Subtle things that make a difference, but definitely I can imagine how much work it takes to get all those things right.
Yeah.
For sure. It's interesting how like it goes back to your interest in interior design and like spaces in general, because the experience, it's part of the experience, right?
Yeah.
It kind of links back to that.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, that's a good observation. That's that for sure. It goes back to that.
Cool. And I'd love to, because you spent a big part of your career working about the role of technology, implementing technology in schools, and thinking about how to use technology in classrooms, whether for teachers or for students. So I would love to spend a little time just talking about that and getting your like insights on what you learned. And maybe starting with thinking about what for you is the ideal role for technology within the school environment.
It should be there just as well as there's a pencil there, or there's a paper there, or there's a table, or there's a whiteboard, or there's a window or a screen, or it's just the beautiful thing about technology, I think, is that it can be anything. It's also a curse, because you hear so much about technology being used in the wrong way. You hear parents saying, oh, phones or technology should be banned in schools. This bad things are happening. And they're seeing and first of all, some of the best use of technology actually happens in schools, but the worst often happens at home. And so parents see the worst use of a technology because it's technology without a purpose. It's technology where they're not active users of technology. They're just scrolling or not using it creatively and not with other people often. So I can understand why some people think of it as like a bad thing. And some parents and school leaders and politicians are like, well, kids screens should be banned in schools or whatever, like phones, because their students are on there way too much already. And you're like, well, that's not a problem of the school. Like that definitely is a problem, but like that's they're outside of school. They're doing way too much of that bad thing. But there's so many good things that they can do. Like, and how much we talk about screen time and all that. Like, okay, but first of all, screen time is a bogus term in my opinion, because it's like, how much screen time, how much time a day should a 7-year-old be looking at violence? Should we be 30 minutes? Is that, or should it be no minutes at all? Like, that's screen time. But should a parent limit the time if their child wants to learn how to cook through a recipe on Instagram, or if they are talking to their grandma on FaceTime? Should we limit that? Should we limit it if they're learning to code on Khan Academy? Should we limit it if they're playing chess online with a friend of theirs? Should we limit it if they're fixing their bike through a tutorial on TikTok? If they're messaging a friend that's traveling, if they're playing the piano through Musician, if they're designing a jersey for their basketball team in Figma, like, should we limit that? Should we say 30 minutes? I don't think that's enough, but it's way too much for violence, or porn or whatever they could, like, and in school, like, should a school say, oh, students here can only be an hour in front of screen? But like, what if they're designing a poster for the school play? Yeah, okay. And learning to code, Khan Academy, or using YouTube to learn math, or if they're translating text or speech to their native tongue, they just moved to the country and they're using the phone to translate and having conversations with their friends. They're writing an essay, or they're learning French in Duolingo, or they're sketchnoting a TED Talk, or they're editing a movie on climate change, or they're having a device read to them because they're dyslexic, or they're debating AI on an issue. Like, is this how long? Like 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour? Like, that's not enough. Like, but should we limit the bad? Yeah. And I think it's also like, just people think of technologies as one thing where they're like, as if like technology is food, for example. And they're like, oh, screen time is bad. It's like saying food is bad, but that's not like, some food is bad. Not all food is bad. And we try to limit what we put in the fridge, what we put in front of our kids, what we cook. We teach them, we model that, we talk through it. And then, it's not all screen time is created equal. And like, that's kind of like what I'm thinking about so often, is like, the role should be, it should be there. It should be, a part of the school. It should be a tool that you know how to use and know when to use it and when not to use it and how to use it. Like, that's, and if schools are taking away those opportunities, I don't really see a place for them to say that they're educating their kids for the world outside of school. Like, if you're not preparing them for a world that includes technology, and you're just saying that's not our problem, you're really taking away, like, it really makes me question a lot of the other things that you're not talking about or not doing, if you can just think that the outside world doesn't really belong in schools. I think that's just crazy. So that was my rant on technology.
that was awesome. And it's funny because I was planning to ask you for like some good examples of technology in school, and you gave maybe 20, 25. So that's great. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And if you could design a school or education around one thing, what would it be and why?
One thing. Okay. If I could design it around one thing, I think the whole goal of schools and education is to help us and our students is just to become more human. And whatever that, means, but for you, but just be if you dive and tap into just the basics of being a good human, good person, and using your whole brain and body, using it's art, it's movement, it's also science and math, it's the logical, it's the creative, kind of seeing us as a whole organ, like a whole person that needs a lot of things and different things. I think just being more human. I think that's what education, in my opinion, should be about. And there's my favorite word in Icelandic is actually the word education, which is it's the Icelandic word menntun, MENNTUN. And menntun is actually derived from the word human in Iceland, which is menneska, to be human. So the most educated person is actually the most human. So that's what I think. And if you ask parents, it doesn't matter. And I've done this with parents from parents, teachers, school leaders. I've asked probably, thousands of teachers in, I think, probably 8 countries now and probably over 100 schools. And I ask them, the question that I ask them is, what do you want people to say about your kids when they graduate or when they grow up? And I know, I can always guess 90% of what they're going to say. And it's always, I want them to be kind to others. I want them to be great communicators, problem solvers. I want them to be happy. This is normally number 1. Creative, confident, and great at working with others, great collaborators. And they never say oh, fantastic at math or science or know their history or, these are things that maybe would come up later. And maybe that's just part of being, problem solvers, collaborators, and kind. But that's always what what they're really saying is I want them to be good humans. And too often it really makes me think about how do we, what are we doing in schools and at home every day to help our kids be more of that? And I always ask the question when they tell me I want them to be these things: kind communicators, problem solvers, happy, creative, confident, and good at collaborating. I normally would ask them, okay, if you want that, if you want them to be kind to others, why is school such a competition? Why are you pairing them up against each other? If you want them to be great communicators, why are all the classrooms so quiet? Why is that considered such a good classroom where students are quiet? If you want them to be problem solvers, why are you giving them all these problems that have already been solved? And if you want them to be happy, why is play not a bigger part of the day for them? Why is recess so short? Why is play not just the natural way we learn? If you want them to be creative, why is everything in the school so academic? And why is that success? And if you want them to be confident, why are they all rated on these tests that don't show what they're actually capable of or interested in or want to do? And if you want them to be great collaborators, why are they all working in isolation? Why are we in communicators and crowd? Why are they working on their own so much and collaborating is actually considered cheating? And that's just questions for them to ponder. Just what if we want this, why do we do that? And I just think that's a key thing for us to think about.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ingvi. It was a very insightful conversation. I loved it. I could go on for another hour.
Yeah,
you have a dinner to go to.
Yeah. Well, it's been so much fun.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah,
for me
I loved
too.
it. Yeah,
where can people find more information about you and your work if they want to learn more or reach out?
So I'm actually, I've told 3 people about this, but I'm just working on opening a new website. That's Ingvi, INGVI.me, M-E. And so there, I'm going to move some of the podcasts that I have in the past. I haven't done the podcast since I started at the ministry. And some of the blog posts that I've done in the past, I'm kind of migrating them over, but a lot of it at ingvi.me is, you can see a lot of the projects that I've done, and I think that's the best way. And also to get in touch, you should be able to go into my LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram through there. So I think that would be the best way.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and enjoy the dinner. What kind of food will you eat? I'm so curious.
I think my parents, it's lamb tonight. So I'm going there. I think there's lamb with béarnaise sauce and probably potatoes. And if my mom is cooking, there's going to be vegetables. If my dad is cooking, probably not. So we'll see.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks so much for the chat, man. I loved it.